So really, when I say changing your perspectives, this is this is one of the aspects that really ties into that. So you want to embrace this as a time of growth and be ready to seize the opportunities to come your way. You also want to consider how you can foster uniqueness in your own experiences. So this can be like reflecting how you can infuse your professional endeavors with your individuality. So this is not trying to be like anybody else. It makes sense when we get into a field to compare ourselves to others, right?
Hey there, besties. Welcome to our cozy corner of the podcasting world. Thank you for pressing play and spending some time with me here on Share a Latte. I'm Min Sukree, your virtual coffee bestie, podcast orchestrator, master storyteller, and your caffeinated host. Picture us in a cozy cafe with the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee as we embark on a journey filled with inspiration. In each episode, remarkable women share their tales of overcoming life's hurdles, offering a comforting embrace for your spirit. These narratives serve as a reminder that resilience and unwavering determination pave the way to success. Join me each week for conversations that will stir your mind, warm your heart, and you'll unearthly own your own ability to transform challenges into remarkable strengths. The Share a Latte podcast sprinkles hope, courage, and the belief that you can not only handle life, but thrive throughout your day. All right, besties, let's embrace those tales of triumphs and get ready for another episode of Share a Latte. Hey there, latte and podcast lovers. Thanks for pressing play and joining me here on Share a Latte. I'm Min Sukree, and I have a special episode of Share a Latte for you. I have been taking a serious deep dive into astrology, and this might be because I've been stuck on astrology TikTok, or it might be a strong voice inside my head that continuously tells me that the stars hold the answers, because my grandfather used to say this to my mom all the time, and my mother continues to say this to me. So in the light of my thirst for knowledge about myself and the curiosity about what my future might hold, I sat down with Amber Chapplain, a professional astrologer, a tarot card reader, and the host of the Pisces Perspective podcast to help me unlock what 2024 has in store for me. On a small note, before we dive in, I only had a small email exchange with Amber before our reading, and I'm still in shock as to what she already knew about me before I even got on the call with her. So let's get started. Welcome back, friends. I am so excited because sometimes I do things for the story, and this isn't just about the story, but this is about learning a little bit more about yourself. And to me, astrology tells you a lot more about yourself than we actually believe it does. I connected with Amber, and Amber has already told me that my dreams were exactly in line with what the stars are telling her. So, Amber, let's kick things off with my natal chart and what you saw.
Yes. So right off bat with your natal chart, like you said, you know your big three.
Yes.
These are important placements to understand because when we do have transits that get close to the key luminaries, they affect us very greatly. These are key components, the big three in our personality. To break it down in kind of English, they're like the main acting roles in your birth chart. There's lots of other dynamics, there's lots of other things going on, but these are the main storylines. So that's why they're important to know, and we look transits that are going over that. Your get up and go, like when you were saying around spring equinox, you were feeling revitalized again. Well, that sun is in Aries. Your sun in Aries definitely is a key component in this year to come for you. 2024 areas of expansion for you. You're going to experience a major change in your spirit and outlook, adventure, publishing, possibly if you've been thinking about writing something, but if you have, this is the year for you to shop it. Publishing sector of your chart is going to be very lit up, as is your career and life path. We have Jupiter moving into Gemini. So we were talking about Jupiter and abundance. And so 2024 is going to be an exciting year for you. Areas of highlight or areas of expansion that you can expect is definitely perspective and outlook.
Okay.
You're going to be doing a lot of sifting this year through perspectives, your beliefs, your worldview. And as I said, publishing is highlight I don't know if you are.
I've been thinking about it for months.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was something that had already planted its seed, but there is a great support for that this year with Jupiter being in Gemini for you. So if you were going to pursue some of that things look good down that path. As career, you're really about your career this year, which you started with right off the bat. Like the first things you said to me, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You're ready.
I'm ready.
You are very ready. This year is going to be about learning how to not sweat the small stuff more. You're in Aries.
Yes.
You are naturally here to conquer. That is the name of the game. And that is where all your ambition comes from. And when we get to a high point of productivity, we have to learn how to delegate, which Aries sometimes has trouble with, because Aries likes to do everything by itself. Yeah.
Like I've never felt more called out.
Yeah. I get it. My midheavens in Aries, I like working independently. I don't really like to delegate. I'll just get it done quicker mentality. It's just easier for me to do it.
Yeah.
So because you're going to be getting busier and busier, that's going to be a bit of a lesson for you this year. Okay. Because you're going to have to delegate and sort. And that's going to actually enable you to have a broader perspective and find a way that you can make yourself feel supported. So any minor inconveniences that crop up, they're not going to stress you out. It's adjusting the perspective of, just for example, okay, the room's a mess. It's okay that the room is a mess. Life is messy. It's okay if I know you're a Virgo rising. That's a little bit hard.
Like, what do you Amber, I would never.
I know you're a Virgo rising. It's just clutch your pearls. Yeah. But you're going to have to learn how to let certain things like that go, because the busier we are, the more we have to learn how to prioritize. And so that is really going to be one of the main themes for you this year, is learning how to do that so that you can enable yourself to have the growth that you are determined. Like, goals are not a problem for you. Drive is not a problem for you. We've got that in abundance. What we need is discernment of, where do I want to direct this energy so that you're not wasting any of it as you move through the year, because you've got this great momentum going. One of the big headlines of 2024 astrology in general is Pluto moving signs from Capricorn to Aquarius. Have you seen any social media posts, anything about Pluto moving?
Everybody's talking about it.
Everyone's talking about it, right?
And I have my moon in Aquarius.
Yes, you do.
And this is going to be huge, I'm sure, for me.
Absolutely. And Pluto only changes signs every 27 years. So throughout our lifetime, we only generally experience 3 shifts of Pluto in our chart. So while these shifts are more subtle and they might take a little bit longer to integrate, they are very powerful. And we only experience 3 of them. Now, for you, this is going to be happening in your 6th house, which is our daily routines and habits. The 6th house is related to, like, that sounds mundane, but it's those little things every day that make up our life. Yeah. It is what time we get up in the morning. Do we eat breakfast? Like, all these tiny little things that add up to the whole. That's what the 6th house in astrology is about. It's about, how can I make life easiest for me? How can I take care of my health? How can I have my own bag? It's also related to our daily work. So this is a little bit different than the midheaven point, which we'll be talking about, which is like life purpose, big grand plan. This is how we incorporate that big grand plan into our everyday life, because we want to be able to sustain. You have a tendency to burn bright and burn out quickly, because there's this massive, you have all this energy, right? As an Aries, you're ready to go. Yeah. But at times, you might go too hard at the beginning and then get burnt out, which can be really difficult. And so The sixth house is going to be trying to correct that. So you want to watch yourself that while I am striving for success, I am not straining myself.
Right.
So really understanding that you can manifest in relaxation, which is hard as a Virgo as a Virgo rising, because you're made to fix. So it's very difficult to understand that you can be productive and rest, because Virgo doesn't really compute that. But there's things to be done. There's things to be done. What are you talking about? Yeah. It's important to understand that we need this. If you want success, it needs to be sustainable.
Yes.
You do have a Taurus stellium. So you have a heavy dose of concentrated energy. This is very encouraging with your Aries sun, because Taurus can lend its capacity for endurance to your Aries energy, which is a bit quicker. But the key with this is Taurus is capable of a lot of survival, but we don't want to survive. We want to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And so Pluto entering this sixth house, and again, this is a very long-term transit. So this is going to trickle in over the years. You're going to learn how to do this ideally better and better, but it's really good to be aware of it, because then you'll start to see it happening. And so your work and habits are going to have to evolve in important ways. So this is going to be entering an era of ridding yourself of bad habits or routines. And because of that, your expectations are going to transform. Right now, you want intensity, you want passion. Mediocre, it's not going to cut it. We're cutting with dull scissors there. We're not interested. No. So that is wonderful. But we want to make sure that mediocre approach, you're taking it to mediocre is no longer okay. Take it to those daily routines and habits.
Okay.
For example, a way this could manifest is, let's say you don't eat breakfast. And it's okay. That's a mediocre way to start the day. You're not fueling yourself. So looking at it that way, going, okay, I need to make sure that I'm putting gas in this car, and your car being your physical body, and really understanding that. Do not be afraid of criticism in this next year. That is another lesson that as a Virgo rising, because your mind is so active.
I understand. I don't understand.
I know. As a Virgo rising, again, you're a fixer.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of not finding the problem is very intimidating. Virgo wants to diagnose, right? Because that's how we find the solution, is we diagnose the issue. Right? That just makes complete sense. But you can get into this trap of over-diagnosing in the way, and what I mean by that is Virgo's its own worst critic. So it's understanding that just because I am criticizing myself this way, in my mind, it doesn't mean somebody else is looking at me that harshly.
Okay.
And so being able to look at your relationship with criticism and go, it's not personal. I can take it, or I can choose not to take it. I don't have to take that criticism on. And that's my choice. Again, easier said than done, because you want to fix. But sometimes it might be a bit of a waste of mental energy that could be directed somewhere else in a more positive manifestation. I want to get into this Jupiter and Gemini stuff, because this is really a big thing for you this year. Now, you said Jupiter, you saw it equaled abundance.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You dive into astrology TikTok and you're like, abundance? Tell me more. Because the minute I heard that Jupiter was going into my midheaven side, I was like, guess whose doors just bursted wide open this year.
Oh, yeah. I always say, everybody's happy to see Jupiter show up at the party. It's not like Saturn, where you're like, oh my God, you're here with all your rules. Jupiter's blow it up. What's your dreams? Let's be enthusiastic. Let's go. So we like to see him show up.
Yes. Yes. He's the life of the party. He brought a ginormous keg.
Totally.
And he's tossing money around like everywhere.
Absolutely. He's topping off your glass. Don't worry about tomorrow. It'll all work out. That's very Jupiter energy. So that is making a conjunction to your midheaven point. Now, it's important to understand the midheaven is those greater aspirations that we have. This is tied up with legacy. How do I want to be remembered? When we say career, it's not so much, I've had numerous careers, for example, in my lifetime, but what I do now is my passion, and that's my midheaven manifesting and stuff like that. So when we look at the midheaven, it's important to note, like, this isn't, I could do this or I could go do that. This is no, this is what I want to do. This is how I often call the midheaven our Instagram page. This is our intentional projection into society. So where the rising sign is more unconscious, like we might not realize the way it comes across or operates, the midheaven is extremely intentional. So we often want to be seen in the spirit of our midheaven. Mine is an Aries, for example. I want to be seen as somebody who takes charge and moves forward. Yours is in Gemini. You want to disperse information for the greater good.
Yes.
So that is lighting up that sector of your chart. And it's also making a square to Saturn at the same time. Now, Saturn is, so we have two energies happening here.
Yeah.
At the same time. Saturn, like I just said, we're not always happy to see Saturn. It's like a fun sucker Saturn. Saturn's running around after Jupiter, like fretting about when are the parents getting home? Are we going to get caught? Blah, blah, blah. What's the punishment going to be? But Saturn also lends discipline and the ability to get things done. Okay. So when we have both of these energies happening together, this is actually an incredibly opportunistic event, because you're not only granted with the opportunities, you are granted with the follow through. So this is a period of growth and alignment towards your intended career path. It's absolutely the time to take things to the next level. It's also a time to narrow down your focus and choices. Okay. Saturn is here on your shoulder going, I need you to take a look at this. What's really important? What do you actually want to do? So we got 5 projects. You're excited about them all. Realistically, to do them all to the level that you want to have them done at, you might have to take them one at a time.
Right. Okay.
Just because we can juggle doesn't always mean that we should.
Right.
There's a time where it's necessary. But sometimes I think because in modern society, we're expected to always be productive. We are 24/7, at least in Western society, like we're a 24/7 society. And so I think that there can sometimes be this pressure that is actually destructive towards getting things done, because it just stresses us out.
Yeah.
And then we can't be creative when we are under pressure. It's very hard. And you are a very creative person. Aries is a very creative sign. So this is a real time for you of excitement and endurance. So really learning how to blend passion with sustainability and moving into confidence. I feel like a lot of the time you might struggle with imposter syndrome.
A lot of the time.
Because you're so self-critical.
Like all the time.
All the time. I don't know. I'm like, I drip.
That was so downplayed. A lot of the time. No, it's all the time.
All the time. Right? It's time to actually believe in yourself. And that ties back into the don't worry about the criticism. You can shoot, or potential criticism is probably a lot of what you struggle with, like the idea that something might be criticized and how can you fix whatever that's going to be. So really, when I say changing your perspectives, this is part of this is one of the aspects that really ties into that. So you want to embrace this as a time of growth and be ready to seize the opportunities to come your way. You also want to consider how you can foster uniqueness in your own experiences. So this can be like reflecting how you can infuse your professional endeavors with your individuality. So this is not trying to be like anybody else. It makes sense when we get into a field to compare ourselves to others, right? Because we need benchmarks and we need information, and this is how we do that and we gather that. But at some point along that journey, we have to understand that we'll never completely emulate, even if it's a grid plan, someone's grid plan for success.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a blueprint. Here's how I did it. There's a lot we can take from that, but also it's not going to work the exact same way for us because we are a different person.
Right.
So looking at, I want to be as authentic. You have this beautiful Aquarius moon. And so really bringing that in, and with these new perspectives, you're going to be accumulating, let it enrich your professional journey.
Okay.
You will be pushing boundaries of your comfort zones. So you will feel challenged maybe with some of the opportunities coming along. Now, this is just a hypothetical example, but it could be like you got a public speaking opportunity, but you're afraid to speak in public. Do you take that, or are you going to work on your fear?
No, taking it.
Take it.
No.
Yeah, no hesitation,
no,
right?
That's probably the Aries inside me being like, what are you, crazy? Pass that up? What are you, nuts? No, that's not
exactly, right? You're gonna take it, and you're gonna embrace the unknown. And that is your power right now. That works for you right now. But we want to remember, with great success comes great responsibility.
Yes.
There's all of this background work behind something we look at it. I always say there's no such thing as an overnight success. You just don't see the hard work.
Right.
We just see the result.
Yes.
We don't necessarily see the journey. So it's easy to go, that I don't understand why it's not working for me that way. How come it's working? What's wrong with what I'm doing? What am I missing? There can be a lot of that analyzation going on, but you're looking for something that at the end of the day is elusive, because it's about what works for you. So just remembering, and again, that goes back to having confidence in yourself, right? And feeling, no, I do have these experiences and this knowledge that I've gathered over my life, and it is valid. And I am going to share it, and I'm going to share it more so in the way that it really doesn't matter how you respond to it. It just matters that I shared it.
Right.
So taking that, maybe fear of rejection, maybe almost in a way. Does that make sense? Like, when we, as a creative person, being creative is like getting naked in front of someone. Like, you're just like, I created, this is from my soul. And it doesn't have to be a literal painting, right? This can be a business. This can be your child. This can be so many different things. But circling back to that idea that great success comes responsibility, and making sure that you're taking care of yourself, and making sure you're not overbooking yourself, making sure it's very important for you to do that. Saturn is also going to be conjunct what's called your descendant point. Now, this is happening on March 4th.
And it's Jupiter and Saturn squaring?
No, this is Saturn conjunct your descendant point. So this is your relationship sector of your chart. So I found it interesting that you just said you met someone, because there's activity definitely happening in that area of your chart for you. This particular transit is March 4th to November 15th of this year. When I say the descendant point, what I'm talking about is the beginning of the 7th house in your birth chart. And the 7th house is our house of one-to-one relationships. Now, this can also be like key, intimate, professional partnerships, very close, intimate friendships, and of course, a romantic relationship as well. Saturn likes to point out what is working and what is not working. So when Saturn's visiting here for most of the year for you, it's going to be about what's not working in your professional relationships, what's not working in your key intimate partnerships. You are here to connect authentically this year with the type of people who are best for you long term. So it almost, again, circling back to the idea of sustainability. You do want to be cognizant if you feel like your friends or partners are being too critical or controlling with you. That sometimes can flare up here with Saturn. And Saturn does represent the father in astrology, or like father energy, authority, the bosses, those types of personalities. So you may find that you almost subconsciously attract a strict father figure. Right? Like it's just, it's
Oh my God, I just recorded an episode where I just continuously being called out all the time. All the time. There's something, especially when in my romantic relationships, there's something extremely polarizing.
It's karmic. It's a little bit, because Saturn's very karmic. So we tend to look for the things that we need to address with Saturn, but this can happen subconsciously. So for me, for example, I have a bunch of planets in my 7th house, and there's definitely times in my life where I'm like, why am I just cursed in relation? Why do I attract these people? I don't understand. Why am I attracting nut bars? But it wasn't until I circled back and came back to myself and I went, wait, the common denominator is me.
I say this to myself all the time. All the time. You can blame these other men, but the reality is, girlfriend, you're the only person who's consistent.
Exactly, right? So it's, oh my God, it can feel like that feeling of Saturn's presence here. And so it might feel like also you're either, polarizing was a good word. It might feel like you're either attracting a really strict father, like more authoritative type of people in your life. But then on the other end, it's like the other people in your life might be actually quite younger than you or immature. Mm-hmm. And then you're in a position of responsibility within that relationship. So you're having these kind of two opposite end of the spectrum experiences, which can be very frustrating because, again, it's just, what is this curse? What do I need? How do I break this?
Yeah.
But strong relationships through this next year, and I'm going to say this quite blankly, like the relationships that survive, you are going to be culling. That's what Saturn is here. What's no longer serving, you gotta go.
I feel like 2023, though, a lot of those already broke. There was something that happened in 2023, and I'm going to say it around September time, when I realized, I was like, why are you here? Like, why are you, this sounds like a horrible thing, but sometimes my bluntness comes out. But literally in my head, I was like, you're not serving a purpose in my life.
No, absolutely.
Keeping you around for what? To dust you off?
Yeah.
Forget it. You're not, no. Unless you're going to, again, from the girlies from TikTok, you're not providing money, food, or a higher power that is going to feed my existence on this earth. There's just no room anymore. And
absolutely.
A lot of that broke in 2023 for me, because it was like a light had shined and they were like, what are you doing? No.
Now, were these more, though, surface level friendships? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah. Now that started, you've gotten rid of some of the surface level.
Yeah.
You might find and maybe you have called already, but I do feel when I'm talking about this Saturn influence, this is going to be probably a more key relationship. Or a more intense relationship, not romantic at all necessarily, but there still might be some culling that you're looking to do, because you really are in this period where you're defining yourself more clearly as an individual. So it's really important that within your relationships, they're flexible enough to allow you to grow and have that breathing room to do that. So essentially, it means you need to have key relationships with people who don't project their expectations upon you. Because you're not here to serve their expectations. No, not anymore. Exactly.
That ship has sailed. Thought its way to Tahiti. She ain't coming back.
Absolutely. Now, there is a week I want you to write down, April 26th, a little longer than a week, to May 5th. If you're going to pitch something, this is a good time. Reason being,
something as in like,
if you were going to plan a business meeting or connect somebody for a collaboration that you're like, they're never going to want to collaborate with me, but it's but you send the message out anyways. You know what I mean?
You recognize that this week I'm just gonna blitz all my favorite people.
Oh yeah,
I
mean, like just be like, do it. This is why we use astrology, right? We use astrology to support us. Mm-hmm. It's a tool to help us navigate. Whether you're aware of this influence or not, it's going to happen. And lots of people don't use the influence. This influence, for example, can happen for a week and it can be just an elevated good mood. Mm-hmm. Because they're not realizing it's happening and they can't really grab the reins and steer it. So that's why astrology is helpful, because it helps us optimize these times. So this particular transit that's happening is Jupiter's going to be also conjunct your natal Venus. And Venus is relationships. It's also communication style. I think a lot of people tend to forget that a bit. But this is a wonderful time, like I said, to do pitches, but also I feel as though it's romantically going to be a very good time for you. Now that can mean a surprise, that can mean, or as simply as it could be, you just might find that you and your partner communicate really super well through this time. Like you're able maybe to talk about issues that are harder or anything like that with a little bit more ease. And that's because Jupiter is lending that ease to Venus and saying, okay, maybe like this hot topic that we both normally get defensive and it would be really hard to talk about, this would be a good time to talk about it because it's just lifting some of the energetic blocks around communication. Okay. Also watch your spending around this time. Sometimes we tend to, when Jupiter hits Venus, because Venus is also connected to finances, we get in this headspace of Venus sometimes makes Jupiter too positive when they have this kind of relationship. So it's not, oh no, I'm going to buy this. Money will come in tomorrow. I have faith money is going to come in tomorrow. But then leaning into that too much and being like, oh, I'm now earning big, so I'm going to spend big. Mm-hmm. It's exciting. And then if you've ever gone on a shopping spree and you like wake up later and you're like, oh my God, I hope they take returns. I don't know what I was thinking doing this. That kind of just be wary of that, because sometimes this aspect, you'll just be like, oh, it's a great time to buy this car I've wanted, for example. And really it's
not the best time to be doing that.
When the mood passes, you're locked into an 84-month finance of a Mustang. It's just like your shit.
It's also interesting that my partner's birthday falls within that timeline.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. That is very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, this could be then you guys taking a romantic getaway, things like that. It doesn't always have to be like a groundbreaking thing, but it sometimes can just be just a really nice time of enjoyment where things seem to just come very easily, or happiness just seems to come very easily. Now, I don't know if you're locked in power struggles with anyone at the moment in your life, but leading into this year, we also have Pluto making a square to your natal Mercury. This officially happens on January 29th, and it's going to last until October 13th, 2025. Yeah. So this is one of those long overarching influences. Not as long as a Pluto transit, like this is 27 years versus a year and a half, but this is something. So with those authoritative figures that maybe you're attracting, you might get into a lot of intellectual power struggles with people, or you might find that you're being challenged by others a lot, or there's tension between you and some sort of group or institution. It can manifest in a lot of different ways. And again, these are subtle, but very deep. This can be that you have changed your mental processing and beliefs. They're being challenged. You're going through necessary transformation. And people, when we change, sometimes people can't handle it. Mm-hmm. It brings up things about themselves. Mm-hmm. I'm an alcoholic. When I got sober and realized, and I changed, right? Like when that happened, it was just like, suddenly I didn't have anything in common with a lot of people. Mm. And that's not because I quit drinking. That's because I completely changed my perspective.
Right.
So people have reactions, and oh my God, I always say, you will know who your true friends are when you hit success.
Oh,
It's not actually about hitting the ground, because
no.
listen, it's easy for people to be nice to you when they feel like they're doing better than you.
Yeah.
When they feel like you're doing better than them, people resent success a lot of the time in others. And I'm not saying like all your friends are going to be resentful, but you're going like this year, and it is likely you're going to get pushback from certain people. It's not a bad thing. It's honestly going to be more about them than it's going to be about you. So it's just important to keep that in mind, because when we're challenged, and especially with your Aries sun, our first instinct in that energy is to attack back or be like, who the fuck are you talking to me? But this is more about going, okay, you're being a bully, or you're projecting your shit onto me, and I don't actually have to deal with that at all. And being able to truly walk away from that. You don't have to engage in the debate.
Right.
Very hard for your Gemini energy, because Gemini's so good at debating. Your victory is almost not, like, you're 95% victorious in debates, right? No question. But you don't have time for that shit this year. You're rising above
in
that.
2023, I felt like a lot of the battles that I was doing, I was like, you know what? It's just not worth the fight. I'm not going to. Okay, because there were so many times when I look back at 2023 and I was like, why didn't I say something? Like, why? Because I was exhausted. I was like, I could say it, but what's the point? You're not listening to me anyway.
Exactly. It's about picking your battles so you can win the war.
Yeah.
And so you might find that you're faced with situations you can't change or solve. And these might be situations that are beyond will, strength, and logic. And that is very hard for you to accept, because the will of the Aries, if any sign could turn a bullet in the air and send it back, Aries can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Aries can do it.
I know.
So accepting that, no, like, I can't, there's literally nothing I can do. All I can do is detach. This is the way that it must be meant to be, regardless of how it feels. And I'm being taken out of my depth for a reason, because this confronting kind of energy this year, it's meant to break down your ability to control the circumstances in your life in a really positive way. It's releasing a lot of responsibility, because you're being pushed this year to courageously allow yourself to experience all of your emotions and situations, but in a way where you can accept that I cannot control final outcomes. This year is meant to empower you to a point of peace. And that's very important to remember, because there are going to be times where you are going to be frustrated. But there's a lesson in every single one of those. And it is really to propel you towards peace. You are making that. You are forging, in a way, you probably feel entering this year, like, you know how books sometimes have 3 parts?
Yes.
You may feel like, okay, I'm starting a whole new section to my life. I'm starting a whole new section to my book.
Exactly what felt like, right? When I was entering this year. I literally was like, okay, 2023 was the year that I had to like learn harder lessons, let go of a lot of things that just weren't, whether I liked it or not. Like, some of those decisions I didn't like. They were made for me, and I had to purge through all of them. But when I entered into 2024, it literally was like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to make life count. This is the year. And I came in with big goals. I was like, no, I told you that's 2023. I didn't have any goals. I was like, forget it. This isn't the world that I want.
Well, you had more to slip into a state of being. You had to get back into your body again. With the series of eclipses in 2022 and 2023, the way they were hitting your chart, you probably felt a lot of disassociation.
So much.
You just felt, what am I in this body? What am I doing here? We're coming out of the Taurus Scorpio axis. So it would have been all around your motivation with your Mars and Taurus.
Oh, yeah. like there'd be days and months where I would go and I would be like ready to hit the ground running and be like, this is what I'm going to do and everything's going to be great. And then within a matter of sometimes like weeks, sometimes the next day, I'd be like, oh, that was a nice dream.
Yeah. And that can be very frustrating, but we are moving in this year to, I'm going to talk about the eclipses happening this year now, Aries and Libra axis. And for you, this is going to be happening over your houses 2 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Now, eclipses in astrology, just to define what those are, because they're a hot word, like the eclipses. Eclipses happen every year. Like, I'm not taking away the validity of them, but they're not a rare
occurrence
event.
Right?
Yeah, we're always experiencing a set of eclipses, and we're always on an axis. So people tend, there's a fear around the word eclipse, I feel, but it's actually, I'm like, no, eclipses are always happening. This change is always at work. The thing with eclipses, though, is they happen in shorter brackets. So while we've been looking at some of the longer overarching themes that are beginning and will be carrying on for you for some time, the eclipse influences are more 6 months to a year. So they're more immediate. They're more visual, like we'll see them. That. Yeah, we'll see them quicker.
Wow,
you're like good.
Up for joy.
Yeah, right? Now, for you, with the second house, I'm just going to describe the second and 8th house briefly because it's important when we're looking at eclipses to understand the house that they're happening in. And the reason for that is the subjects that house covers are where we're going to see this more quick, abrupt, or immediate change. Mm-hmm. Now, the second house, this is all about our self-worth. This is how we believe in ourselves. What is our value system? What do we value in life? Actually, there is an emphasis on resources, skills, possessions, income, and earning potential. These are a set of financial houses. You've got money on the mind and you're ready to make it. Yeah. You're ready to make it.
Yeah. That's not news.
No. So there is going to be an emphasis on money, activities, and skills that add to your value. And this is going to really develop your feeling of self-worth. This is a time where you're going to discover what you value the most. It's also a time where it's good to sell the things you don't need. If there's, for example, assets you have that aren't serving you, this is a great time to rather have the money in hand than holding on to anything that is not. It's like we were talking earlier, if you don't feed me this way or this way, you got to go. Yeah. And so the second house is doing that in a very quite literal, maybe material sense. Okay. So if it can even be like, I don't know if you're thinking of moving or selling a house or buying a house, but like that, this property is tied up with the second house. Second house. So those types of things. And when we move, we naturally declutter. When we pack and we go, okay, I'm ready to let this go. I'm ready to let that go. So you're going to see immediate movement there. You also have Pluto there. Sorry, I'm just flipping between the chart screens here. You natally have Pluto in your 6th house. So these eclipses are going to be prompting very significant transformation for you with Pluto here, like they do already. But with Pluto's presence, it's even more. And Pluto in astrology is very much our dark side, which isn't a bad thing. This is shadows. Pluto can bring up feelings that are unworthiness. It can be fear. It can be all of those dark feelings. And with Pluto in your 2nd house, you've taken on a lot from a very early age. The houses can also work as time in our lives. Right. So the 1st house is when we were born. This is like years 1 to 3. Mm-hmm. And then the 2nd house is when we're actually growing up and starting to establish our sense of security in the world. Mm. And I do feel that at that point in your life, I don't know if you moved internationally, if that's when you moved. Is that when you moved?
I moved to Canada when I was 5.
Okay. And your 2nd house timeline. It absolutely makes sense. That probably had quite an impact on your feeling of worth in your environment or in the world. Now, this year with the eclipses happening here for you, it's time to really release that and time to reflect. And a lot of the time, especially with Aries, because you're on to the next, the next victory, we don't take the time to reflect how maybe these seemingly, what's the right word? Not normal international moves aren't necessarily normal. I experienced one as well. I grew up in Australia and we moved to Canada when I was 5 as well. Mm-hmm. So I can relate. The feeling of displacement is you don't relate to your peers. You talk different. Countries are different. Social structures are different. Yes. And so at that very pivotal age, when you're forming your sense of value in this world, that can actually have quite a big impact that we don't even think about. Mm-hmm. At least I never thought about it until I hit my 30s. And I was like, damn, I don't think of it as childhood trauma, but it was a traumatic experience in a way. Because it's very intense and you're very young and you don't know how to handle it. Mm-hmm. So that is something that you may take a look at this year and go, is there anything left from that experience that maybe I haven't acknowledged? Because acknowledgement alone can release a lot of stuff. And looking at yourself empathetically and saying, oh, that was really hard. That was really scary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And really recognizing the strength that you had as a kid in this time, the resilience. And we're just children, we don't know. Yeah. But we act instinctively. Mm-hmm. So in really going back and maybe examining that time or just reflecting along that time can be really healing. Because Pluto, ultimately, the reason it's associated with shadows or like difficulty or wounding is this is where we're meant to heal in a chart. So where I see Pluto in a birth chart is where where the greatest wounding and the greatest healing needs to take place. Okay. So always important. Now, the first eclipse is going to be March 25th. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be in Libra at 5 degrees. So this is in your second house. So you may notice in and around this date, the buying and selling may come up very much. So you may move or you may actively take steps towards calculation of, okay, we're going to move. What's our budget? Where do we want to live? Or taking things like that into account. The next eclipse is a solar eclipse in Aries at 19 degrees. And this is a very important one for you because it's conjunct your natal sun. And the way I like to describe this energy, and this is going to be in April for you, if life was a movie, I talked about planets being roles, the sun is the protagonist. However flawed it is, we cheer for the sun. The sun is the hero of our chart. It's the light, right? Mm-hmm. And we're all born to be the hero of our own life story. But you're ready now to be thrust into that starring role, and you're ready to fight to reclaim it. And it is, I think, understanding that this might be more of a reclaiming of yourself, of who you maybe were when you were younger. Like, again, instinctually, who were we when we operated instinctually as opposed to like in our heads and trying to categorize and make everything logical. So you may experience people telling you can't do something
all the time.
Yeah. And it's going to, again, it might damp up this year. You're going to get a lot of people going, why are you doing it that way? Or, hey, I'm reclaiming my victory. It's none of your business. Right. One of my favorite phrases for this influence is, what do you think of me is none of my business. Yeah. And you can say that to people. The look on their face is great.
Yeah.
I do that. It's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah.
But we want to remember, though, really keeping the focus here. So when we are met with people coming right up against of what we're trying to do, we just don't even engage in the fight.
Mhm.
Let them fight their imaginary fight over there energetically and carry on with what we're doing. So
Okay.
you may notice some heightening around that time. The next eclipse is in Pisces at 25 degrees, September 17th. So this is a bit later on in the year. Now, this is more relationship stuff coming up because this is going to be happening in your 7th house. But there's nothing to fear. This is the strong relationships aren't too affected by this. It's more if you were in a relationship that was deteriorating, this would be the time you move. But this is about striking a balance between your own needs and the needs of another. So you might find that around this time, we're working through a lot of compromisation.
Mhm.
And I like to use the word compromisation and not negotiation because they have two very different energies. Negotiation kind of insinuates there is a prize that we're both looking for.
Right.
And is we're both working towards common goal.
Mhm.
And so you may find that, okay, just in some of your key relationships, we need to make some readjustments, or we need to really communicate to make sure that we're both on the same page, that we're both getting what we need. How can we support each other? For example, if you had just moved in with someone, this would be like that period of, I put my laundry here, you put your laundry. It can be things like that, and making those adjustments and going, okay, we need to find our middle ground as opposed to being two individuals. We're trying to figure out how to make these two individuals work as a unit to support each other. Then our last eclipse is in Libra at 10 degrees. So this is going to be back in your 2nd house. And closing this year, moving into the end, you're in a good position to concentrate. You've worked all year really to nurture yourself and move into your power and move into your peace. And so you're really able to look back, I think, at this point, because you do tend to, I don't feel like you're going to dawdle with any of these things. So I feel at this point in the year, you'll really be able to look back and go, okay, wow, I didn't realize how attached I was to that situation or that relating pattern that was keeping me from growing in my relationship in fulfilling, balanced ways. If you are in a new relationship, it's also helpful to remember, because the 7th house stuff coming on is we often discover a lot of ourselves through the reflection of ourselves in another person.
Yeah.
So during this time, you might gain really valuable insight on yourself actually through your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Mercury retrogrades, I also want to talk about because you're Virgo rising. How do you experience Mercury retrogrades in your life?
Listen, hold on. First of all, I should preface by saying that there are some Mercury retrogrades that everything is quote unquote fine. And I use that lightly. It's not like it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me as heavily. There are other times like this one where I was like, man, girl, give me a break. You're around you went into retrograde for a couple of weeks, and even days before you went into retrograde, like the shadow periods, you already kicked my butt. Like, how much more do you want to give me before I
often find the shadow periods are worse.
Right
before.
We're recording this during a shadow period of
Yeah. We're post shadow. It took us 4 times.
Yes. So like the reality is, listen, I know that I'm supposed to love Mercury because she is happy in my side, but there are times, man, she just does not like me.
No, because again, Mercury is the quickest moving planet. It's go quick, and it's the boss of your chart. And that's why we always pay special attention to Mercury. Okay, this is the boss of your chart. Right off the bat, with Mercury as your ruler, you experience Mercury retrogrades more deeply than the rest of us. Mm-hmm. When you're referencing, sometimes they're not as problematic. Sometimes they are. It's probably depending on the sign that it's happening in and where it's happening in your chart. But nevertheless, You're always going to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time when you're Mercury ruled, Mercury retrogrades can manifest as analysis paralysis. You can get so in your head that making decisions then becomes very difficult because you're just mentally overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say for Virgo risings, Gemini risings, you need to mark down those Mercury retrograde dates. You need to be aware that they're happening.
Great.
Because it will help you identify what you actually need to be concerned about and what you don't. And you'll be able to go, you know what? My mind is in a super heightened state now. Mercury is retrograde. It's my mind. I'm very much in my head, and I really need to be aware of that. Same if you're moon ruled like me. I'm a Cancer rising. I have to pay attention to what the moon is doing because that affects me greatly. So we all have a ruling planet or a boss of our chart. And it is always important to see what that boss is doing through the year. Mercury retrogrades, we just came out of the one, but the next one is in Aries, okay? And this is April 1st to April 25th.
So my 8th house.
This, you're going to be doing a lot of thinking probably about your investments. So where am I, financial specifically, where do I need to put my money? Is my money working for me? Those kinds of ideas you might find in April. This can also be merging of assets. So the 8th house is often joint assets, things that we hold possession of with another person. For example, if you were to buy a house with your partner, that would be an example of this 8th house movement there with the Mercury retrograde and your sun. You might find that you move right or make decisions about moving right after that Mercury retrograde. Probably wise to wait till after the Mercury retrograde, or just be very aware that it's happening. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed or you feel like you can't pull the trigger on a certain something because you're just not sure, there's too much static, that's when you just chill and you cruise for a little bit if you can, and you let the Mercury retrograde pass. The next one is August 5th to 28th. So this particular Mercury retrograde starts in Virgo, but because it's going backwards, it cycles back to Leo. So it will be touching your 1st house and your 12th house. So this is really neat in the way the 12th house is very much our hidden depths. This is our hidden parts, the areas of ourself that maybe we're not as familiar with, but they're there. And Leo, like, you are an entertainer. I don't know if you believe that just yet.
Oh, no, I believe it.
Okay, good. Because you are. So this particular retrograde, you may be examining of how can I bring those more Leo-esque qualities of myself in my 12th house into the immediate representation of myself day to day, which is the 1st house. How are we projecting ourselves into our immediate environment?
Okay.
So this can be like, where do I need to take leadership as well? Leo is very associated with where are we taking leadership? So you might go, where am I taking leadership in my life where I don't need to? Or where do I need to step into a role of more leadership with my life? You might be like mulling over, and how can I incorporate that into my daily life and my physical representation? You might undergo a physical change of image. You might cut your hair. You might, I don't know, go shopping and buy new clothes because you're just like, this isn't me right now. This is me last year. And I really want everything that I have right now to reflect who I am right now and not me 5 years ago. Because you fought very hard to be where you are. The last retrograde, we always close the year with one, is in Sagittarius, November 25th to December 15th. So you may find that you naturally want to take things a little bit. It's good for you to end the year slow. As
a Mercury ruled person. We always have, and that's for every year. We always have a Mercury retrograde at the end of the year. And for Mercury ruled people, it's, I think, a great reminder that we want to be actively slowing down and not actively speeding up at this time. So just keeping that in mind. Mercury is going to be direct in Virgo, July 25th to August 4th, and September 9th to the 26th. Those are 2 time periods to remember. When Mercury goes direct there in Virgo, again, this is like when I was talking about Gemini or Jupiter in Gemini earlier in the year. This is a similar energy in terms of momentum. Okay, I can really be effective right now. I know how to use my word. Like, you'll be able to use your words very effectively. You might be more articulate. You might be spurred to write a lot during that time when Mercury is direct. And if you are planning to do writing, that's a very good time to plan like a writing retreat or something like that, because Virgo is very connected to the written word. That's an overall snapshot of your year. It is going to be very busy. It does look very successful. The things you want to walk away from the reading with to keep in mind is honoring your authenticity, letting things, criticism roll off your back, letting any power struggles go, if possible, any relationships where those power struggles are, getting your finances on track. That doesn't mean they're off track right now, but building, we're again coming back to that sustainability. We're not just thinking about today. We're thinking about this whole section 2 of this book that, or this part of your life that you're on.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? I know that was a lot of information.
No. Yes, I have questions.
Perfect.
This was a lot of information, but it gets me more excited about this year. Before we started recording, I had told you that I want to be huge and I want to sell out big stadiums and I want to take my podcast on tour the same way that Alex Taylor took her podcast this year on tour. So I want to do the same thing. And sometimes I think that it's really written in the stars as to whether you utilize that gift that you're born with or not. Is this the year that I explode, I explode and become a world name, a household name?
I think this is where you gain your traction towards that.
Okay.
Again, that was almost a very Aries statement, right? Is this the year I explode and become a household name? Yes, but maybe not that quickly. Right. We're gaining the traction. We're moving towards that. And you are gaining momentum through the year. So that's all very positive towards that. You may very well strike deals this year or connections, or even if you sell a book, for example, there's usually a year-long process of editing and like all of these things that go on. So are you moving towards that? Absolutely. Is it all going to happen this year? Not necessarily, but the pavement is being, like, your roads are being paved. So then anytime an opportunity comes up, we want to be in that position where we can run with it. But in order to do that, we have to sustain an optimal state of being. So that we're able to recognize those opportunities and really move intentionally through them. So yes, you natally, when we're looking at your natal chart, girl, you have so much in your 9th house. I see you working overseas or traveling, or when you're saying touring, absolutely. Is that in your natal chart? Yeah. The 9th house is overseas travel, long distance travel. Relocation, I have 9th house stuff too. So that's reflective of like our early moves. But it also can mean that you live in another country multiple times in your life. So you might find that, now this is natally, this isn't transit, like this is your natal chart. And yeah, touring, you can go touring internationally. internationally, like that's all there, but this is also a publishing house. The 9th house is the house of publishing. So I see that when I look at your chart and I'm seeing this in like everything in relationship to each other. You may find that a lot of your travel then maybe comes from your written work. So that can be like a book tour.
Mm-hmm.
That can also be a podcast, because podcast is still communication. But I do see it more as a writing thing. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be the podcast, but I do see the writing thing as a very strong influence.
Okay, that's helpful. Jupiter lands in my midheaven. I believe you said April.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to mean a lot of money?
No.
I was like, how do I word this in a way that I want cash?
No, I know. Hey, that is the first. Listen, when it comes to astrology, most people come to me about 2 things: love and money. That is the most, those are the 2 most sought after questions. The important thing with astrology is to remember that it's not always literal.
Right.
Is Jupiter going to bring money? Jupiter could bring you an opportunity to make money.
Right.
It's not like a pot of gold or winning the lottery, or you suddenly get an inheritance, although you may get an inheritance because of the 8th house stuff that's happening there. But this is more like Jupiter's going to give you ways to do that. It's going to show you paths that you can move towards that abundance. Can Jupiter sometimes work like a bestower of flash good luck?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But that's not its natural necessary state. Jupiter's more, did you see that? Over there, I think like it's the timing. He's really good at putting you in the right place at the right time. So often we're always in the right place at the right time. We just don't recognize that and we don't act on it. So that's where astrology, the power of choice, comes in. With astrology is, yes, there are certain things that are, written in the stars, but we still are individuals with power of choice. Yeah. So I always say astrology reading is, I'm giving you information, what you choose to do with that information and how you choose to work with that energy in your life. That's nothing to do with the sky. That's totally up to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have heard that sometimes people can see big windfalls of money interpreted in their astrology. Is that at all in my, you mentioned it, you were like, there's possibilities of it happening in your 8th house.
Yeah, like you can, the 8th house is, like I said, a financial house, and you do have the financial houses lit up this year for you, the 2nd and the 8th with the eclipses, which is those more immediate things that we see. So the 8th house, where the 2nd house is like money we make ourselves. So this is, you've done the work, you earned the money. The 8th house is more, we're getting money through alternative means. So it's not necessarily coming from our work. It could be an inheritance. It could be a marriage where you're marrying somebody who has more money than you, so you then have more money. That kind of stuff is more 2nd house stuff. So I feel like with Pluto being in your 2nd house and the activity that'll be happening there, you're really going to transform the way that you make money.
Right.
That is what's going to be the main focus in the 2nd house stuff. In the 8th house stuff, that's a little bit more, not vague, but it's more subject to external influence. If that makes sense, right? Like, yes, it's more situational than it is what you're actually going out and doing. So is it possible? Yeah. The way it manifests, like I said, it could be an inheritance. It could be that your partnership is fruitful that way. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay.
Yes, it kind of answers my question.
Yeah. So yes, there's going to be financial activity for you.
Okay.
The clearer vision of it is the 2nd house stuff. Because like I said, that's more, you're in control of that stuff. The 8th house stuff is more there are external influences and other factors that
Right.
that can play in. I don't see. Sorry, I'm just flipping through some transit charts here for a
No, it's
second.
totally fine. You don't see when I should buy a lottery ticket.
If you were going to buy a lottery ticket, it would be the Venus Jupiter conjunction. That was at the beginning of the year. That is the, where were we here? What's the next one? Jupiter conjunct Venus, April 26th to May 5th. That would be like, quote unquote, your lucky time.
Oh, yes. We talked
Or
about
if we were looking at the whole year, we're going, when do you buy a lottery ticket? That's the week.
Listen, if that's what happens, I will be calling you up.
Can you imagine? I know.
I don't even know how to put this into words right now. That would be funny. Let's jump to relationships just really quick.
Absolutely.
There's a strong potential, you said, of
merging.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't necessarily mean romantic, right? You did note that. I do know that there's, but you also had mentioned that because a lot of things are happening in my 8th house, that there's also potential for me to marry someone who is a little wealthier. I've been always the kind of girl who does things on her own. I'm sure you already know this.
Yeah.
So I guess my question would be, like, am I going to miss an opportunity because I'm not looking for a person potentially because I'm in something? Or is this going to mean that there's something?
So what you're asking is,
yes, I'm trying to figure
essentially
out
because again, we circle back to, we don't take astrology too literally.
Yeah.
When an astrology, so for example, when we're looking at 7th house stuff, and if I say there could be a new beginning, we can have a new beginning within a relationship. That could be like either you have a breakthrough or a really leveling up conversation with your partner, and then your relationship levels up to a new beginning. Or it can be you meet someone and you're like, oh, wow, there's a really significant spark there. But I can't say if you're going to meet, because it's up to you. If you're in a place where you are, let's say, disconnected in your relationship, you're more liable to notice other people. That's just anyone.
Oh, absolutely.
So it comes back to that of, when I said strong relationships aren't generally affected by this. So it's a time to look at and say how maybe committed. We're looking at the merging in the 8th house, right? So that could be something like you pausing and going, and there's nothing wrong with reevaluation. It's something we should do all the time.
Yes.
Saying, okay, am I ready to merge? I've worked so hard on my individuality, standing on my own 2 feet, my own identity, et cetera, et cetera. Am I ready to merge with this person? That would be a helpful question to ask.
Okay.
If the answer is yourself, if the answer is no, you may suddenly become aware of a lot more possibilities in other people. If the answer is yes, when we're really in that good relationship space with our partner and we're making goals together and etc., we naturally don't really notice. We're plugged in. We feel right. So it's really going to be depending on where are you at that moment in time? How happy are you with where you are? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my natal chart, there's a lot of things happening in my third house. In my 3rd house specifically.
Are you looking at a whole sign chart or a Placidus chart?
The one that you sent me, the whole sign chart, wasn't it?
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah,
the whole sign chart.
I just want to be sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the aspects?
Yeah.
All the oppositions.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so
actually, sorry, not my 3rd house, my 4th house, Sagittarius.
Yes, so you have your 4th house. You have 3 planets there. There's a lot of depth to this, so I'm going to try and describe it without butchering it in a shorter, because I'm trying to condense it a little bit. But Uranus is the great disruptor. Okay, Uranus is emergency situations. rug being pulled out from underneath us type of feeling, chaos. Neptune is things that are hard to see, hard time seeing things clearly. The fourth house is our roots, home, and family.
Yeah.
You also have Jupiter here, which is great because of the two other planets that you have there, Neptune and Uranus, which can be more challenging.
Yeah.
Jupiter makes things easier. And how I see that manifesting in your chart this way is that you experienced really significant disruptions right off the bat. Maybe you didn't understand what was behind a lot of it. There may have been a lot of things that you were like, I know that this is, let's say, a taboo subject, but I don't know why. Or no one's explaining anything to me. All these decisions are being made and nobody's talking to me about it. And so that feeling of it's always chaotic, or you could have moved a lot, for example, as a child. So not just one big overseas move, but maybe you were in multiple houses like over years and just a lot of chaos like that.
Yeah.
This can manifest as it probably was really hard for you to feel grounded when you were younger. You probably felt like way up here all the time. The good news is with Jupiter here, those experiences happened for a reason. And it's the tools that those, like the traits that those experiences give you.
Right.
That is like your superpower. Jupiter shows us where we're naturally skilled. And I feel like you can use a lot of that stuff because of the relationship it has with the sun and the eighth here, to transform other people's lives. Like the eighth house is very much about transformation. And I feel that you're a sun in the eighth house, that's a superpower for you. Transformation is not a new thing for you at all. But taking a step back and look, when we look at the natal chart and go, wow, yeah, like there are these definite, like challenging, destabilizing experiences that happened, but I needed that in order to fulfill my destiny of who I'm supposed to be. Diamonds are made under pressure.
Yeah.
I always say that. People, when they look at a birth chart, generally they want to see all the blue lines. They want to see all the harmonious things. But success, in my experience as an astrologer, doesn't come out of the trines and sextiles. It comes out of the squares and oppositions if you learn how to manage them. And so I always say there's no good or bad chart. There's no good or bad placement. There's an opportunity within each one. Astrology gives us the information, if you will, but what we do with that, again, is up to us. So when I look at that, and then these oppositions from Pluto and Saturn in your second and third up to your ninth, the first thing that jumps out to me about that is that you felt like you haven't been able to have a voice in a lot of your relationships. So you might feel like you have to scream to be heard. You might have to stomp your feet. And
I feel like I always have, I've up until about a little while ago, I've always felt, and then and not just relationships with like romantic ones, but sometimes my friendships, I felt like if I wasn't throwing a tantrum like a brat, I wasn't being heard. And I hated that feeling.
Yes. And that's awful. That's Saturn in your third house. So that's a restriction on communication and the way that you're able to articulate yourself. And the reason I say it's in relationships is that direct relationship that it's making with Venus up in your ninth. So there, I can see that right away. Like when I see that in a chart, it's okay. There were challenges around feeling heard or having your own voice. And you did not have that in the household with Neptune in the fourth. It's almost a reoccurring dynamic, the house into your life. But the ninth house is Jupiter's house in the chart. It's the area of expansion. It's the area of growth. This is far reaching. This is in literal ways, like overseas moves and stuff like that, but also our philosophy, our goals, our things we believe in. That's the ninth house. And once you believe in yourself. I see this ninth house really getting blown open for you, but that belief in yourself is more than just saying it.
Yeah.
Aries, we can repeat it, which we should. I'm a big fake it till you make it person. I believe that you got to push yourself that way, but also really making sure that you believe in yourself. That's the real key that I see when I see your natal chart. So, and it's about feeling, not acting. Okay. Not that I'm saying you walk around acting, that's not it. But no. I mean, I walk around acting more confident than I actually am all the time, right? Yeah. But feeling it is completely different, because when we feel it, we can make decisions from a true place of confidence.
Okay.
And that's what's grounding.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that you probably really lacked early on. Mm-hmm. And that's where like your validity, like when you're not feeling heard, you feel invalid. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. Like straight up just sucks. And so I feel that when we look at the second house stuff that's going to be happening there with Pluto for you this year, we're really going to do that. We're really actually going to walk the walk. Yeah. And that is when this ninth house door, I feel, blows wide open. Okay. If that makes sense.
Yes, that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. You had mentioned earlier that manifestation for me happens when I'm relaxed. And I giggle about it because that's
hard to do.
Not extremely difficult to do. But I guess my other question is, sometimes astrology can unlock the key on how we manifest. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I feel like I'm manifesting wrong. And I don't even know if there's a wrong way to make
manic manifesting. It's called manic. Yeah, it's manic manifestation. I've been there many times. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I do. I've been there many times. And that's where I always have to circle back and look at the element of control.
Right.
The key to manifestation, and I'm not a manifestation expert, but I have followed the law of attraction for a long time and listened to a lot of stuff, read a lot of stuff and whatever. And what I've gathered through that is the trick with manifestation is it only comes through release.
Yeah.
You're putting that wish out to the universe and you're letting it go. It doesn't mean that you're not actively working towards it, but it's energetic.
Yeah.
It's that true, I trust you universe okay. So I'll tell a little manifestation story. And this is when I really felt like I got what manifestation was, or when I saw it start to work in my life, was I always listened to the podcast, Witch Bitch Amateur Hour. I'd listened to them for 3 years. And I always wanted to collaborate with them. I loved the podcast, but I definitely didn't think they'd be interested in collaborating with me. It was more like I would just love to collaborate or have an engagement with them at one point in time creatively. Mm-hmm. That I treated like a passing thought and I let it go. I would really like that, like a birthday candle wish. You blow out the candle, you release it. So I remember thinking, God, that would be so cool. Like, I would just really like that. Mm-hmm. And I focused on it positively. So, it would just be so cool if that happened. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really take any active steps towards it until I decided to advertise on their podcast. So I emailed them and I was like, I would like to advertise my business on your podcast. To which the host turned around and said, actually, we'd like to have you on our podcast. So,
oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
Do you see how I took a step towards it? I initiated the contact, but I was very much in the space of, I'm going to let the universe handle this.
Do her thing. Yeah.
And then it presented me with the opportunity and it blew up. That was a huge thing for my business when that happened. Mm-hmm. It was great exposure. So that, in my experience, has seemed to be the key, is like, you have that wish and letting it go doesn't mean that you're not working towards it. And I think for me, that was a real like clicker kind of thing in my head of, but if I'm not gripping it with both hands, I don't care.
Yeah.
If I'm not holding it and I'm not focused, that means I don't care. That's not true. And when you realize that, like, that you can care and still be like actively relaxed, that can be a difficult thing to conceptualize, because we are very programmed with the past. We're coming out of a Pluto and Capricorn 27-year transit. Capricorn is glorify the hustle, glorify the hard work. Nothing comes without hard work.
Yeah.
Like that's,
and we bought into the hustle culture.
Oh, we bought into it so hard, right? It's been the past 27 years. What's happened with the economy, materialism, products, buy. It's glorified taking no days off. It's amazing. You work 24/7, so do I. I hustle. Yeah. We're all experiencing now societal burnout, and we're entering Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to be about greater humanity and connection. And so it's totally understandable that we're that way coming out of this Pluto and Capricorn era. It's just so glorified to be in ultimate control. Like Capricorn's a control freak in essence. And it's just, so it's totally understandable why we're like that. We're all to an element programmed to be that way at this point, but just because that's the way it is, it doesn't actually make it true. Right. Like the idea, that philosophy of hustle. Just because a big group of people are doing it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do.
Right. That
but
makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I'm so excited for this year.
I'm so excited. I'm going to be listening to hear of how all of this manifests for you.
I've been saying this for a couple of months. I feel like January is going to be just a turning point in who I am. And I think after January, after I get through this month of getting back, and you just said it too, right? It felt like 2022 for me was stepping back into my skin, and that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like I had no idea what was going on, which is probably why I didn't set any goals at the beginning of 2022.
No, you probably just felt like you were floating.
Yeah, like it was definitely that. It was definitely like, and it was also the idea that in 2022 I was throwing so much spaghetti at the wall and praying to God that it would stick. I was just like, maybe this will work. Oh, that didn't work. What about this? And that didn't work. So I was just ready to give up in 2023. I was like, no, you know what? Forget it. Clearly, it's not meant for me. So I'm not going to.
That's a very Aries mentality, right? Throw everything you got in it. It has to work. I'm going to throw it so hard. It has to work. And then when it doesn't, you're like, what the fuck?
I didn't understand.
I do this anymore.
That's exactly it, right? Whereas 2023 was really the year that I was like, okay, why isn't it working? What are the external factors that are feeding into this not working? What am I doing differently that's feeding into why this isn't working? And we also said it in part of this, where the karmic relationships. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
I not only just personal, not just professional, but personal too, right? The girlfriends or the relationships where I was like, the only common denominator is you, man. You can complain about it, girl. But
it's one of those things where you just gotta be like, all right, it's me.
yeah, the anti-hero over here. But yeah, this was the year that I, like, entering December, I was like, there's something happening in the sky. I can feel it. So what is it?
That's the Pluto shift. We're in the 29th. We're in the last degree of Pluto in Capricorn. The 0 degree and the 29th degree are the two most intense degrees. They're the most undiluted, pure force of that sign. Having this 29th degree in Pluto, we're feeling collectively that last applying of pressure.
Yeah.
That Capricorn pressure. The economy is bad.
Yep.
Capricorn's financial sign, the economy is bad. Capricorn's about reserving your resources. Everybody's in this state of financial fear. Right now, I feel experiencing it on some way. It could be job security. It could be investments are not doing well because the stock market is terrible. It could be not being able to renew your mortgage because the interest rates are insane. So everybody is going through this 29th degree of pressure. I almost think of it as a steamroller. What was it the other day? I was like, just stick a fork in me till that we're into Pluto and Aquarius, because this is such an intense degree.
Yes.
And where that's happening in all of our charts is different. For me, it's in my house of one-to-one relationships. It's been a long week and it's Wednesday for me. I'm like, I've had so many confrontations this week. I am good for the rest of the week.
Yeah, that was my 2022, where at one point I was like, oh my God, it's been a year. And my girlfriends were like, it's January 15th.
Yeah, I'm just like, just put a steamroller over me and just remember, for you, the Capricorn house is your 5th house of creativity.
Yes.
So any self-criticism, block it, like where you may have been blocking yourself creatively. You might be going through, for example, right now, your what is it? The marathon, the last kilometer is the longest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this 29th degree feels like.
I'm waining for Pluto to move her butt into
time,
girlfriend. Like, push
get into my 6th house.
I'm over it. Time to go. Like,
evacuation notice.
Yeah,
yeah.
I gave you the eviction. Pack up your bags. You have 10 days.
Yeah.
And I'm over you. You gotta go.
We're over it.
Yeah.
So for you, that's in your 5th house. 5th house is also romance. And that's not so much partnership, but how we experience romance is the 5th house. So a little bit different than when I say the word partnership, I'm talking about how two people work together to create a happy union or a happy life. When I say romance is an experience of pleasure.
Yes.
So it's a little different in terms of how it can come up. And the 5th house, you've learned a lot of lessons about what is actually romantic and what is not actually romantic and should be a red flag. Because the intensity that you're attracted to naturally as an Aries sun, that's natural for you to seek out. People have to be able to keep up with you. You need partners that can keep up with you. And so you may have been going through that and going, okay, it's also about how do I seek pleasure? What do I find romantic? But there's the general idea of romance. That's great. Bottle of wine and flowers. That's not necessarily the idea of romance for everyone. So you may have found that through a lot of your romantic experiences up until this point, you've really been going, and more figuring out what you don't like or you don't want, as opposed to narrowing in on what am I going to try and bring in? We've been figuring, oh, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. And now you have a better idea. And you're moving into this space where you are going to grow in confidence. And when you grow in your confidence, that's only going to, if you're in a positive relationship, build that relationship. Because when we're stronger as individuals, the partnership is stronger, right? Because we're filling our own cup, we're able to meet our own needs. You are meant to act very independently. You're not actually supposed to be in any codependent relationships, which maybe you found yourself in. Again, I think we talked about like that caretaker to the paradox. You're getting this or you're getting that. And it's just, so now you're like, oh, I don't want that. And I don't want that. I want this. And that's what you're moving more into.
Oh my God, that's so funny. When I first started seeing my now boyfriend, I remember saying to him, I want to be able to travel. And you don't have the capacity that I have right now to be able to travel because your children are much younger than my children. So the reality is that I need to know at what point are you going to say to me, this is too difficult for us to maintain what we have. So either you need to be at home more. So I was like, so am I going to be able to travel like 1 week a month and you'll be okay with that? Is it 2 weeks a month? And at what point do you say, no, I can't do more than X
That's
number?
a wonderful way to communicate because it's really building realistic expectations. And those are the things that do matter at the end of the day. You can love someone or be attracted to somebody as much as you want. It doesn't mean that it realistically works. And so it's great that you're speaking like that, because it's essential for you to have that freedom. If you're going to fulfill your life purpose, you have to have that freedom.
Yeah. Oh, this was so good. Well, I'm going to be keeping you updated as much as possible.
Please
I'm
don't.
so
You're my
excited.
friend now. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see.
Yes. So I guess the biggest one will first be like what is it? The eclipse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eclipses are going to be the more immediate, instantly recognizable. And then anything to do with Pluto is a longer arching concern.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Amber.
You're so welcome.
This was so great. If anybody's looking for Amber's services, they will be in the show notes. And Amber, where can people find you best?
You can find me, my website's the number one best place, amberenergyservices.com. I'm on Instagram at Amber Energy Services. I have a Facebook page. I'm going to be honest, I don't really use it. It's there. It's there. But I find Facebook business page very difficult to
navigate through. You're not the
navigate it. It's very, right. I'm just like, this is like building another website. I'm trying to just stick with the one. I will just note that to book with me, it's always through personal contact. I don't do click to book.
No, yeah.
I do that because I do to touch the client, like say hello before we actually sit down to dive into a whole bunch of things. So I do that on purpose. So if you are looking to book, you do have to email me.
Yes. And it's worth emailing one. And also two, Amber, it gets back to you relatively quickly. I think it was like a day and a half that I heard back.
Oh, thank you.
So.
I try. As a mom, I'm like, it depends.
Life gets yes. And there's also like, you don't really have control over your schedule when they're that young. So you're like flying at the seat of your pants trying to figure out if today.
Oh my gosh. I get up at 5:00 just so I can have 2 hours of uninterrupted work time before she wakes up.
Get excited for the fact that you have the 5:00 because there will come a day where that might not be so possible, but I'm glad you still have your 5 a.m.
It's my only window. It's my only window. Yeah. Awesome. She's an Aries moon, so she keeps me busy.
Nice.
Yeah, she keeps me busy.
We'll be looking for her to light up our skies in the future.
That's true. I hope so.
Amazing.
But I'm excited to see you go on your path and watch how all of this unfolds for you. I believe in you, so
thank you.
You should believe in you too.
Baby steps in that, for sure. It is a lot bigger this year.
Nothing happens overnight.
No.
Baby steps are actually realistically the steps we take the most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. As we wrap up this stellar episode, I can't help but feel a little cosmic shift in my understanding about what lies ahead. With Amber's astrological insights, the stars have painted a picture of possibilities and growth. Here's to embracing the cosmic dance, learning from the planets, and jumping into the future with a newfound clarity. Until our next cosmic coffee chat, keep the faith and trust the magic the universe has in store. I hope that this episode inspired you and you take bigger steps in creating that beautiful life that you've always wanted. If today's episode warmed your heart, please hit that subscribe button and stay with us for future journeys. If you enjoyed the chat today, your thoughts and feedback mean the world to me, and they'll help others discover the magic of Share Latte. Each story enriches our journey. Remember, you can turn trials into triumphs and scars into stars. Keep believing and keep chasing those beautiful dreams. This is Min taking her last sip from the Share Latte podcast, where life happens and coffee helps.